The moment I will always remember is the split second before my daughter understood what was happening, confusion still on her face, her small hands folded in her lap, her eyes moving between my father-in-law and me, like she was waiting for someone to correct the mistake. There was no mistake. Mia doesn't receive anything from this family tonight, my father-in-law said. He said it the way he said everything, slowly, deliberately, like a man who had never once been told no and had stopped expecting it. Catherine was very clear in her intentions. Family only. Blood only. Catherine was my husband's grandmother. She had died 6 weeks before Christmas, 3 days after she pressed a small wrapped box into my hands in her hospital room and whispered, "Make sure Mia gets this on Christmas morning. I want you to send me a photo of her face." She had held my hand for a long moment after she said it. Her grip was still surprisingly strong. I had brought the gift tonight. I had set it on the entry table with the other presents when we arrived. I had watched my father-in-law pick it up, turn it over, read the tag, "To Mia, with all my love, Grandma Catherine," and carry it away without a word, and I had told myself I was misreading the situation, that there was an explanation. That I was always looking for problems in this family because I had never quite belonged here, and I knew it. I was not misreading anything. Mia was 9 years old. She had been on her best behavior all evening, sitting straight, using her dinner voice, laughing softly when the cousins laughed, saying please and thank you for everything. She had spent 30 minutes that afternoon picking out which dress to wear because she wanted my father-in-law to think she was pretty. She had practiced saying his name correctly so it wouldn't come out wrong the way it sometimes did when she was nervous. Now she sat very still at the far end of the table with a red mark on her wrist where he had grabbed her earlier when she reached toward the entry table and asked where her present had gone. I had seen that too. I had told myself that too. I was done telling myself things. I stood up. My chair scraped against the hardwood. 14 people looked at me. "Give it back," I said. My father-in-law smiled. He had a smile like a locked gate. "Jessica, let's not do this here. Her name is Mia. Give her back what Catherine left her. Catherine's estate is under my management." He folded his hands on the table, entirely calm, the calm of a man who had controlled every room he'd ever sat in. "I'm the executor. That means I determine what was intended for legitimate heirs. Mia is Catherine's step-great-granddaughter. Catherine knew exactly who she was giving that gift to. I was in the room. You were in the room." He nodded slowly. "And now you're making a scene in front of my grandchildren." I looked down the table at my husband. He was standing in the kitchen doorway, still holding the serving dish he had carried out 2 minutes ago. His knuckles were white on the handle. His mouth was open, but nothing was coming out. I had seen that look before. I had spent 2 years waiting for something behind it to change. I looked at Mia. She was watching me with eyes that had already accepted what was happening. 9 years old, and she had already learned how to absorb cruelty quietly, how to make herself smaller, how to stop hoping for correction from the adults in the room. Not tonight. I took out my phone and called 911. My father-in-law laughed. "You cannot be serious." I was already talking to the dispatcher. The next 20 minutes were very loud. My father-in-law's voice rose. My sister-in-law tried to intervene. My husband finally set down the serving dish. The cousins were shuffled out of the dining room. When the 2 officers arrived, I showed them the mark on Mia's wrist, already purpling. 4 distinct finger-width bruises, where an adult hand had grabbed a child's arm hard enough to leave evidence. I showed them the gift tag in Catherine's handwriting. I gave them my statement clearly and completely. My father-in-law told them it was a family misunderstanding. One of the officers looked at Mia's wrist, then at my father-in-law. "Sir, we're going to need you to step outside with me." We did not stay for dessert. I buckled Mia into her car seat, my hands steadier than everything inside me. She was quiet for the first few blocks. The streetlights moved across her face in slow orange intervals. Then she asked, "Am I not really their family?" I gripped the steering wheel. "You are my family," I said. "You are exactly who Catherine said you were. But am I their family?" I thought about the honest answer. I thought about the easy answer. I chose honesty. "Some people decide who belongs to them based on the wrong things," I said. "That's a mistake they make. It's not a fact about you." She looked out the window. After a long moment she said, Grandma Catherine always called me her sunshine girl. I know, baby. She meant it. Then why does he get to decide she didn't? I didn't answer that one. But I was already deciding that he wouldn't. My husband came home at 11. He sat on the edge of the bed and put his head in his hands and said he was sorry and that he didn't know how to stand up to his father. That no one in his family had ever successfully stood up to his father, that his father had always been like this, and people just learned to work around him. He said it like it was an explanation. I heard it as a confession. I told him that Mia had asked me in the car whether she was real family. I watched his face change when I said it. Something broke open in him that I wasn't sure could be put back together the same way. I froze, he said. I always freeze. I know. I'm sorry. Sorry matters, I said. But Mia needs more than sorry. And so do I. He slept in the guest room that night. Not because I told him to. Because he couldn't look at himself in the mirror of staying in our bedroom after what he had let happen. I sat at the kitchen table alone and thought about Catherine. About the hospital room and the wrapped box and the way she had gripped my hand. About the things she had said in the months before she died, careful, deliberate things. The kind of things people say when they know time is limited and they want their words to land somewhere safe. He's going to try to rewrite everything after I'm gone, she had told me once, out of nowhere, 6 months before her diagnosis. We had been drinking coffee on her back porch. I hadn't understood what she meant. I had thought it was the kind of vague worry elderly people voiced sometimes. Now I understood she had been warning me specifically. I started making calls the next morning. I found the name of the estate attorney Catherine had mentioned twice in passing a woman named Ruth Calloway, whose office was across town. I left a message explaining that I was Catherine's step-great-granddaughter-in-law, that I had been present for several of her final conversations, and that I had reason to believe her estate documents might not reflect her actual intentions. Ruth Calloway called back within 2 hours. "I've been expecting someone to call," she said. "I'm glad it was you." What she told me over the next 40 minutes rearranged everything I thought I understood about the last 6 weeks. Catherine had updated her will 14 months before her death. She had done it quietly, without telling her son, my father-in-law, who had managed her finances for years on the assumption that he would eventually control them entirely. The updated will included specific bequests for each grandchild and step-grandchild by name. Mia was listed. Catherine had dictated the language herself. To Mia, who made the last years of my life brighter than she will ever know. The will my father-in-law had filed for probate was an earlier version, the version that didn't include Mia. "Is the updated version valid?" I asked. "It's properly executed, witnessed, and notarized," Ruth said. "I have the original in my possession. I also have a certified copy filed with the state. He cannot touch either of them." I sat very still. "He doesn't know you have it." "He does not. Catherine specifically asked me not to inform him until the estate was being formally contested. She said, and I'm quoting directly from my notes, my son will try to undo what I've done. Make sure there's a copy he can't reach." She had known. She had planned for this. Months before she died, Catherine had been quietly building a case against her own son's future betrayal, and she had done it without telling anyone who might accidentally tip him off. The box she had given me, the one my father-in-law had taken, contained a letter. Ruth told me Catherine had mentioned it. She had written one for me and one for Mia, sealed separately, and had placed them inside the gift, along with a small piece of jewelry that had belonged to Catherine's own mother, something she had specifically not included in the formal estate inventory, something that could not be claimed, contested, or redirected. I needed that box back. I called the police non-emergency line and filed an additional report. Theft of property with documented sentimental and estate value. I had the gift tag in Catherine's handwriting. I had Ruth's account of the letter's existence. I had a photograph I had taken the previous Christmas of Catherine showing Mia the piece of jewelry and explaining its history. My father-in-law returned the box 3 days later, through his attorney, without comment. When I opened it, both letters were still inside, still sealed. He had not opened them. Maybe he hadn't wanted to read what his mother had written. Maybe some part of him already knew. I read mine first, alone, at the kitchen table after Mia was in bed. Catherine's handwriting was shaky but legible, each sentence careful. Jessica, if you're reading this, it means Marcus did exactly what I was afraid he would do. I want you to know that I saw it coming. I spent the last year of my life trying to make sure it wouldn't matter. What he controls is paper. What I'm giving Mia cannot be taken. The jewelry, the letter, and the legal documents Ruth holds, those are hers. Fight for them if you have to. I believe you will. Tell her that I chose her. The same way you chose her when she was 4 years old and needed a mother. Chosen family is the truest kind. My son never understood that. I hope you'll make sure Mia grows up knowing better. With love and gratitude, Catherine. I sat with that letter for a long time. Then I called Ruth Calloway back and told her I was ready to formally contest the probate filing. The next weeks were not quiet. My father-in-law hired an attorney who sent long letters full of language designed to sound like legitimate legal argument and actually meant we are hoping you don't have enough money or nerve to fight back. Ruth was not impressed. She had been doing estate litigation for 23 years. She had seen every version of this before. My husband came back to our bedroom on the 5th day. Not because I asked him to, because he had spent 5 nights staring at the guest room ceiling and had finally decided that the cost of inaction was higher than the cost of everything else. He sat across from me at the kitchen table and said, "Tell me what you need me to do," I told him. He did it without hesitating. His testimony about the pattern of exclusion, the birthday dinners Mia wasn't invited to, the family photos taken while she happened to be in another room, the Christmas gift lists that somehow never included. Her name was quiet and specific and devastating, precisely because it came from Catherine's own grandson, from someone who had watched it happen and said nothing and was now, finally, saying something. He also told me something I hadn't known. His sister, my sister-in-law, who had looked away at the dinner table, who had studied her wine glass while my daughter's wrist was grabbed, had come to him 3 days after Christmas with something she had found while helping sort through Catherine's personal papers. A bank transfer record. 2 of them, actually. Assets that Catherine had verbally told my sister-in-law would go to her children's college funds, assets that had been quietly moved into an account solely under my father-in-law's control 2 months. Before Catherine's death, when she was already in and out of the hospital and less able to review documents closely, my sister-in-law had confronted her father. He had told her she was confused, that she had misremembered, that Catherine had authorized the transfers herself. My sister-in-law had believed him for 3 days. Then she had looked up the authorization signature on the transfer documents and compared it to every other document Catherine had signed in the last year of her life. The signatures didn't match. She called me on a Wednesday afternoon. Her voice was thin, stripped of the practiced composure she usually carried. "I need to show you something," she said. "And I need you to know that I'm sorry I looked away." We met at a coffee shop 2 days later. She slid the documents across the table one by one. Transfer authorizations with signatures that were close enough to fool a bank, close enough to pass a quick review but not Catherine's. Catherine had a distinctive way of looping the C at the start of her name, a habit she'd developed in childhood and never lost. Every legitimate document showed it. The transfers did not. I looked at my sister-in-law across the coffee shop table. She had dark circles under her eyes. She looked like someone who had spent a week not sleeping. "He always told me I was his favorite," she said. "The one he could trust, the one who understood how the family worked." She stopped. "I think what he meant was that I was the most useful, the one who would look away the longest." "You stopped looking away," I said. "Too late." "No, not too late." I sent everything to Ruth Calloway that afternoon. The forged transfer authorizations, the comparison signatures, the bank records my sister-in-law had photographed. Ruth reviewed them overnight and called me the next morning. "This has moved beyond probate," she said. "What you have here is evidence of financial elder abuse and document fraud. I'm recommending we contact the district attorney's office directly." She paused. "He didn't just try to cut your daughter out of the will. He's been systematically looting the estate for months. The total amount across all the unauthorized transfers is just under $200,000. I sat with that number for a moment. "He did this while she was dying," I said. "Yes, while she was in the hospital writing letters to protect my daughter." "Yes." I thought about Catherine in that hospital room. Her grip on my hand. Her voice quiet and precise. "He's going to try to rewrite everything after I'm gone." She had known. She had spent her last months fighting for everyone he would try to erase, with the only tools she had left letters and lawyers and a locked gift box on an entry table. "Tell me how we proceed," I said. The formal process was slower than I wanted it to be. There were documents to file and accountings to prepare and hearings to schedule. Ruth was methodical and thorough in a way that I eventually understood was a form of protection, every step documented. Every piece of evidence properly handled, nothing that could be challenged on procedural grounds later. My father-in-law's attorney made several attempts to reframe the narrative. My father-in-law himself called my husband twice, once to plead and once to threaten. My husband recorded both calls with his phone and forwarded them to Ruth. The second call was the one that mattered most. My father-in-law, no longer careful, his voice stripped of the patient authority he usually performed, called my daughter that woman's child and said she had no business disrupting a family she had never really been part of. My husband let him finish. Then he said, very quietly, "Her name is Mia. She is my daughter. And you are going to hear from our attorney in the morning." He hung up. His hands were shaking, but his voice, when he looked at me, was steady. "I should have said that 18 months ago," he said. "You said it now," I told him. "That's what she'll remember." The district attorney's office opened a formal investigation 8 weeks after Christmas. The forged transfer authorizations were their primary focus, along with the fraudulent probate filing. Ruth estimated that if prosecuted on all counts, my father-in-law was looking at felony charges, financial elder abuse, document fraud, perjury in the probate filing. He knew it was coming. We could tell by the way his attorney's letters changed tone, less aggressive, more conciliatory, full of language about family reconciliation and the benefits of resolving matters privately. Ruth sent a single response on our behalf. "Our clients are not interested in private resolution." The probate hearing happened on a Tuesday in early March, in a courtroom that smelled like old carpet and fluorescent light. My father-in-law arrived with 2 attorneys. He was dressed impeccably. He looked like a man who had spent a lifetime in rooms like this, and never once been told he was wrong. Ruth presented Catherine's updated will, the notarized original and the certified filed copy. She presented the signature comparisons, authenticated by a forensic document examiner. She presented the bank transfer records with the forged authorizations. She presented my husband's written account of the pattern of exclusion. She presented my sister-in-law's testimony. Then she played a recording. Catherine had made it herself, 6 weeks before her death, on her phone. Her voice was weak but clear and entirely deliberate. She described the updated will and its contents. She described her intention to include Mia by name. She described her son's history of financial control and her concerns about what he would do after her death, she said, in words that filled the courtroom with the same quiet authority she had always carried. "I want the record to show that I made these choices clearly and freely, and that my daughter-in-law Mia is to be treated as full and equal family in all matters of my estate. If anyone is claiming otherwise, they are lying. I knew my son. I planned accordingly." My father-in-law's lead attorney asked for a recess. The judge denied it. The ruling came that afternoon. The updated will was valid and controlling. The probate filing based on the earlier document was dismissed. The forged transfer authorizations were referred to the district attorney's office with the court's formal notation of concern. My father-in-law was removed as a state executor. An independent administrator was appointed in his place. Ruth leaned over to me as the judge finished and said, "The criminal case is now the DA's problem, and based on what was entered into evidence today, I would not want to be your father-in-law." I walked out of the courthouse into cold March air and stood on the steps for a moment, just breathing. My husband came to stand beside me. He didn't say anything. He took my hand. I thought about Mia, home with a sitter, working on a project about the solar system that she had been talking about for 2 weeks. I thought about her asking me in the car on Christmas night whether she was real family. I thought about the way she had already answered her own question before I did. Grandma Catherine always called me her sunshine girl. The criminal investigation took another 4 months. My father-in-law was ultimately charged with financial elder abuse, probate fraud, and forgery. He accepted a plea agreement that included restitution of the full $200,000, 5 years of supervised probation, and a formal bar from serving as executor or trustee for any estate in the state. He would not go to prison. Ruth had warned me this was likely first offense. No prior record, age working in his favor. I had made my peace with it. What mattered was the record. What mattered was that it was documented, formal, and permanent. What mattered was that no one who looked him up would find a man who had successfully erased a 9-year-old girl from her great-grandmother's legacy. Mia received Catherine's bequest. A modest amount toward her college education, the jewelry that had belonged to Catherine's own mother, and the letter Catherine had written her. We read it together one Sunday morning at the kitchen table, the two of us and my husband, the March sun coming through the windows at a low, warm angle. Catherine had written, "Mia, my sunshine girl, I chose you. Your mother chose you. The people in this world who are worth keeping will always choose you. Anyone who doesn't simply doesn't understand what family means. You are loved exactly as you are, every piece of you, without conditions. Don't let anyone make you forget it. Love always, your Grandma Catherine." Mia read it twice. Then she folded it carefully and asked if she could keep it in her room. The following Christmas was nothing like the one before. My husband's family had reorganized itself around the damage his father had done, the way families always do after someone takes a hammer to the foundation. Some people standing closer together in the aftermath, some people revealing, through their silence, that they had known more than they admitted. My sister-in-law and I hosted together, which neither of us would have predicted 12 months earlier. Her daughter and Mia spent most of the afternoon in the backyard building something elaborate and inexplicable out of sticks and stones and one of my husband's good scarves, which they swore was structural. My husband made dinner. All of it. He was learning, slowly, to take up space in a way his father had always occupied but differently. Louder with laughter and more honest with apologies and entirely uninterested in commanding a room. He burned one side of the rolls and spent 10 minutes being genuinely distressed about it. Mia told him the burned side was her favorite side and ate two to prove it. At some point during dessert, in a gap between conversations, she leaned against my arm the way she had done since she was small enough to fit entirely under my elbow, and she said, quietly and with total certainty, "This is the best Christmas." I kissed the top of her head. I thought about Catherine pressing that gift box into my hands. About Ruth Calloway's steady voice on the phone. About the recording of Catherine's voice in the courtroom, deliberate and clear across whatever distance separated the living from the dead, still fighting for the people she loved. About how love, when it is the real kind, finds a way to persist even past every attempt to erase it. Some people spend their lives trying to control who counts as family. They write it into documents and enforce it with money and teach their children to patrol the borders of belonging the way they themselves were taught. They always lose eventually. Not because of courts or attorneys or recorded phone calls, though those help. They lose because love is more patient than cruelty, and more stubborn than inheritance, and more specific than bloodline, and because a 9-year-old girl who grew up being called someone's sunshine will carry that name inside her long after the people who tried to take it away have run out of moves. My daughter knows who she is. Catherine made sure of it. So did I. That is enough. That was always the whole point.